I got involved in the UDF in 1983, and I met a whole lot of people. And some of those people, it was very interesting when I got detained without trial in 1988. Very interesting to know, in that group of 9 people who I was detained with, 8 and myself, one of them was Bulelani Ngcuka. One of them was Nqonde Balfour. Bulelani Ngcuka became the head of the NPA. Nqonde Balfour became a cabinet minister. Salim Mauser became a regional cabinet minister. Rihanna Rousseau was not like myself. She was in media and carried on in media. And then I was in a cell next to Willie Hofmeyr, who I already knew quite well from table tennis, as it happens. We played table tennis when he was banned and couldn't speak to more than one person at a time. I used to play table tennis against him. And then I knew him from area committee stuff in UDF. So what I saw after that was, as people moved out of that situation, was very interesting. It's like a little microcosm of what happened in South Africa. Out of those cells, and we all got separated by race and gender. But I was actually the only white person in that group. Willie was already being detained for much longer, much more serious stuff for him. But as we moved out of those cells, you watch the people go into government, the people go into regional government, people go into media, and then all the agendas started to get further and further apart, and then you find yourself up against those people. And I've had that experience now in the new South Africa, where I'm doing very harshly critical cartoons of people who I knew from that period.
Are you uncomfortable?
Well, I sometimes am, because there's sometimes people who I really, really like and I really admire, who I feel are in one or other way transgressing in something. It's a subjective opinion, but I have to go with it. And then I sometimes there's a shift. I mean, in the case of Zwelinzima Vavi, who I've never met, but I've spoken to a number of times on the phone, and who I believe has lots of my cartoons up on the wall at Kasatu House. I put Zwelinzima Vavi in the Lady Justice cartoon. He's one of the people holding the figure down in what is essentially a gang rape scenario. And he was really upset, really angry. But look at the way that allegiances have shifted since then, even just since that cartoon. There's Julius Malema on the one side, Zwelinzima Vavi on the other side. Then you've got Blade and Zamanda, and you've got Gwede Mantashe, and you've got Jacob Zuma. Now, Julius Malema and Zwelinzima Vavi have become critics of Zuma in very different ways. I mean, Malema for selfish, opportunistic, sort of nationalistic reasons, and Vavi for much more considered, much more altruistic reasons, but he's still within the tripartite alliance and he's in a very difficult position. And then you've got people who are still completely concertedly with Jacob Zuma. So now I speak to Zwelinzima Vavi again every now and then. It's a strange relationship. I mean, and I think I don't know if he's forgiven me for the drawing, but it might happen again it's a tough situation being a cartoonist.
Do you miss Julius Malema?
Look, I do. I mean, people move into being one's prime target for a while. I mean, Jacob Zuma hasn't gone away as prime target for a long time, but Malema came along and really gave big competition, and now he's kind of very incidental. He's here and there, and the way that he does get involved is sometimes appalling. I mean, like at Marikana and what he did then was just awful.
The spear. Yeah. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the spear.
Yeah. What do you want to ask me?
What do you feel about it? Was it too far? Was it? You know me. I'm a very open person, and I'm a great believer in free speech and freedom of expression. Somehow there was a little part of me that said, "This is a little bit too much."
I think you have to look very carefully at exactly what happened with the spear. The spear is one painting from a very, very coherent exhibition by somebody who is an apartheid activist, anti-apartheid activist, Brett Murray, a very progressive artist, a very recognized artist. And his whole exhibition was a critique of the ANC. This particular cartoon, particular artwork, was a painting that was a parody of a Lenin painting,
But that was Freudian, what you just did now, because it was really a cartoon.
Brett, as it happens, Brett is a fine artist. He's one of those fine artists who uses a huge amount of cartooning and cartooning conventions in his artwork. He actually he uses the sort of techniques and conventions and comic characters that come out of the cartooning world.
I did go and have a look at the whole collection, and I do understand where you're coming from there, but I did feel that it was a little bit beyond personal. It's a personal opinion.
Yeah, look, my sense is whether or not I would have done that exact painting is neither here nor there.
Well, I wouldn't like my penis displayed like that, because it...
But was that Jacob Zuma's penis? Well, it was a symbol.
Yeah.
It wasn't photographic. It wasn't even drawn naturalistically. You had to kind of look twice and say, "Whoa, that's it." It was a symbol in the same way as the whole painting was symbolic of Lenin as a leader, and here's Jacob Zuma as a leader who's presented himself as a very phallic, patriarchal leader.
What about if we had a female president and we did a vagina in the same portrayal?
There may be some differences with a male artist portraying a female in that particular way. Perhaps a female artist doing that with a female president would be an easier sort of match.
I can see your head picking up doubts there, because the word inequality comes about here.
Always. I mean, for me, there are issues. Despite the fact that I may be seen by some people to be entirely politically incorrect, and I don't like to be controlled by anyone. I had to beat the sort of politically correct stuffing out of myself as we became a democracy, because I was a dyed-in-the-wool UDF activist at a time. You have to remember, in the mid-'80s, there was a very strong and very necessary feminist sort of ethos in the struggle organizations, and I think it was a hugely important, very beneficial influence. And I wish there was actually more of it I think in the sort of patriarchy that we're seeing at the top level of the ANC has kind of blown away a lot of that stuff. But there were issues around that we used to be very concerned, and I still am, about those things. And you mentioned the word inequality. Yeah, there are ways that I would portray things, and there are ways that I wouldn't. But I still say that people have the right in a democracy to express their opinions, to go very far, to go to a point where other people might find it bad taste. But unless it's actually advocating harm to somebody else, and it can be seen to be doing so, it shouldn't be legislated against, or there shouldn't be ways that it should be banned and that kind of thing.
It should find a natural progression in life.
Yeah, if you don't like something, activate against it.
Switch off.
Say it's racist, say it's homophobic, say it's misogynist, say whatever it is. There may be all kinds of things that you can do. So you protest, you show, you have seminars, you have discussions. If somebody tweets a racist thing, I'm ready to condemn that. But sometimes what we're finding, and I feel it's happened to me, is that there are red herrings being put out there. People who say that's racist when they actually don't want to deal with the substantive issues that it's addressing, and they want to try and find a way to make it racist.
Do you think the racial card is pulled too easily these days?
I think the race card is being pulled a lot from a sort of top level. What's very interesting is when you go further down the scale and you see the kind of discussion that happens in cyberspace, there's much more of there is some racial polarization, and there is race card there too, but there are a lot of young black people who reject the use of the race card as an automatic way to avoid discussing real criticism.
Well, the people certainly like Jonathan Shapiro, or Zapiro as we know you. Does that mean you're going on for a long time in the future?
I don't know if I'll go on in exactly the same form always, but I can't see myself stopping doing cartooning in various ways. I mean, I just love this stuff. I want to still draw and write. I want to write stories and do my own comic strip stuff, all sorts of things.